this is Paula on FiveEyes.tv. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Fitzroy, Facey, formerly known as Fitzroy the Buzzboy. Hi Fitzroy.
Hi there, how you doing, all right?
Yeah, not too bad.
Okay.
Now you were formerly known as Fitzroy the Buzzboy. So what's your name now then?
I'm known as Fitzroy, the original soul survivor.
And why, may I ask?
I had the name the Buzzboy for about 25 years, and it's almost like going from boys to men. I really wanted to sort of, now that I promote the magazine, I wanted to have an association more with the magazine. Mm-hmm. I just felt like I'm entering a new sphere in my life. So the Buzzboy makes me sound like a child.
I was going to ask you about the magazine a bit later on.
Sure.
But because we've touched on it,
right,
we might as well speak about it now.
Okay.
Soul Survivors, where did the idea come from?
Right, okay. It came about from two initial ideas. Mm-hmm. There was myself, who I was DJing. There were a lot of people that I was DJing quite a bit. This was in 2006. Mm-hmm. And I would get people ringing me up, say, Fitzroy, can I get on the guest list for this? Can I get on the guest list for that? But even if I wasn't DJing, my phone would be ringing off like I was British Telecom. And I would be hooking up people to go to other promoters and DJs that I worked for as clubs. So I would be giving over a guest list of anything from 10 to 20 people. But it was just mad. It was like I was this oracle of information of where to go. So I used to do it randomly. Anna Marshall has a business which is actually called Local Oracle, which is a local, almost like an A to Z kind of yellow pages type, where local businesses advertise in Kent. She going to like all the sort of the venues in the southeast, like Caister and Lacey Ladies and places like that. She thought, okay, well, why don't I do a version of what I do for the Oracle, but in the soul world, because there must be plumbers, electricians, hairdressers that will want to do business together because they are soul people. So it was that idea, and I said, well, people come to me and they want to know where to go. So we kind of fused the two ideas together. It didn't go down the route that Anna imagined. And so we started the magazine. It nearly never started because I actually had a car accident in 2006 where I broke my leg, and it was a pretty bad accident. But we'd already started preparations, and I was like, no, we've got to go ahead. We decided on the name Soul Survivors. And then literally within a week of doing that, I came across a DVD that was called Soul Survivor, and it was about James Brown. And I knew we were meant to call it Soul Survivors. It was like the confirmation. So, yeah, it's a really good one. So it's like, it started from there, and we were like novices in the industry. None of us had been in the music industry in terms of doing a publication. But what I did was that I had a lot of the contacts, a lot of the people that I know in the industry grew up around the time when I was DJing, and they've gone into becoming people in PR, DJs, promoters, singers, so on and so forth. And so, between us, we just kind of networked the whole of the UK, going to Prestatyn, standing outside till 5 a.m, giving out the magazine. And we just collated people that we knew that wanted to advertise in the magazine, and we just kind of grew from there.
I've read some of the interviews, and it's really, really interesting. So how did you start interviewing people?
Okay. What happened was, Paul Ruiz, who has got his own company called Radical PR, used to work for Morgan Khan at Street Sounds in Ealing. And when Morgan was kind of promoting more house music, I met Paul Ruiz through that. So we just kept in touch over the years. He worked with different PR companies, used to send me music. Anyway, Jocelyn Brown had a new album out with Soul Persona. And he contacted me and said, would you like to interview Jocelyn Brown? And I was like, well, yeah, what is the sky blue? Do fish swim in the sea? Yeah, of course I would. So the first interview that I did was with Jocelyn Brown, which was really good. She was very excited, especially when I spoke to her and said, you've worked with some of my favourite producers and like Leroy Burgess, Patrick Adams and Greg Carmichael. So we had a really good interview there. And then what happened that was the first interview. And what happened was James Brown died, and I was mortified because he's like what I call my spiritual godfather. So I was like, I cried like a baby. I don't care, I'll tell anybody. And basically, we were about to go to print, then he died. And my son was staying with me at the time, and he saw me crying. He's Dad, what's wrong? What's wrong? I said, oh, James Brown died. And he was a Michael Jackson fan, so I know that he knew what it was when someone inspired you. So he said, Dad, he goes, I think Jesus did this on purpose. He said, I think Jesus did this on purpose so he could tell everybody that James Brown was performing on his birthday.
Oh.
And I just went, you have no idea what you just said then. And I was like, wow, I've got to do something with James. So I did, because he meant a lot to me. I kind of wrote a foreword about how he inspired DJs, myself, being black. We all did the James Brown, we scuffed up our shoes, we tried to do the splits and all of that. I used to have like the Pasadena hairstyle with the relaxed hair and stuff. And I just wrote that, and then I asked people that I knew, Trevor Nelson, Norman J, Desi D, Paul Anderson, to just give me some words of wisdom about how he inspired them. And I literally did that within 2 days, and everyone came back, put out that article, and then it was like people just went mad. They were like, oh my gosh. And that kind of started my journalist career as well as my interviewing career. Even though I had interviewed Jocelyn Brown, I think it was the depth of what I was saying and where I was coming from. And I thought, when I saw that reaction, I was like, I've got to do this. And when I do, I've got to dig deep. I've got to go back to my roots like Lamont Dozier, do you know what I mean? I've got to go there. So that's kind of it, really.
Gosh, what a lovely story. Now, you mentioned something about dance. Now, I've seen you dance, Fitzroy, and you're a very good dancer.
Thank you. Dancing, DJing has become an extension of my dancing. I don't know. I would say so. In terms of how I DJ, it comes from the dancing. It comes from accumulating all that knowledge, listening to the artists, listening to the lyrics, knowing every beat of a record. And being inspired by local dancers from my area. There was a guy called Kenton Kerr who was like, he was the guy that you wanted to be. He was good looking, he was fit, he could, you would have liked him. Yeah. Right? He could dance, he could dress, women loved him. He was just, and he inspired, he was like, you want to be like Kenton because he was a bad boy dancer. There were other dancers from my area as well that I went to school with. Hamish from the Pasadenas. Yeah. We went to Oscars on a Tuesday. He was a wicked dancer back then in 1979.
I love the Pasadenas.
Yeah, and then you go into the West End, and there was people like Jerry Barry, who was a jazz dancer, because I used to dance jazz as well. And just, we heard about Trevor Shakes. Yeah. Like, Trevor Shakes was a legend before I even got on the dance floor. So, there was, and I used to go to the WAG, Electric Ballroom, and all different types of dancers. So yeah, I just had my own style. I was very energetic, and I suppose I crossed disco with boogie, with funk, with fusion, with jazz, with everything that I learned from being a kid to dancing. And I don't know, just, the groove makes you move, so what can you say?
You've been a DJ for over 25 years. When did you decide that is what you wanted to do?
I kind of got into it by accident. I started off DJing at my house parties when I was a kid, from like 15 to have house parties for my birthday. And that was when you had like one deck. But I think if I'm honest, what I liked, because I admired DJs on the radio and stuff like that, but what I liked was the fact that my dad had this stereo system. It was like it wasn't like after the blue beat and all of that, when you got the stack systems. Yeah. And he had a setup where he had a deck, and he had the amp and the tape deck, but he had 2 tape decks. And what happened was he had on the amp, it had this lever that you could flick from one tape deck to another. So I used to do, after a while of sort of doing the one-day business at my parties, I started to record the music onto tapes. Because I thought I might be upstairs, I might be in the kitchen doing a party, and the music stops. I've got to run, so I thought so I kind of mentally knew what the last record was. So I do these mixes, but I do it as though it was mixed. So I would, because I know the beat of a record. So if it went with a da-da-da-da, I'd do it in an 8-bar beat. So when the record's fading out, I would stop it, and then it would come in. And so it sounded like it was mixed. So I used to run, and I used to do these tapes for my parties, and when the last record would end and I knew it was going to end, I'd make sure I was there, flick of a button, the other one was paused, and I'd do that, and it would just sound like it was one continuous thing. So everyone used to say, how do you do your tapes like that? Because everyone does gaps between the tapes, but I was like, mine were continuous. So that kind of geared me in. And then around about 1986, the same guy I told you about, Kenton, had a party and asked me to DJ. That was my first paid gig. I got paid £10. I was DJing in a bedroom whilst everyone was downstairs. And then what happened was, I used to work for Starlight Express, the musical.
Did you?
Yeah, I was I started off as a steward, taking tickets on the door, working front of house, and then I became a brochure seller, and then I became a senior steward. So I was in charge of all the staff, delegating what jobs they had to do. And a friend of mine, Norman Cummins, he was a dancer. We were really into our music, and all the dancers there thought we were wicked because we were like the black guys, and they were the white kids doing all their pliés and whatever. But they loved the way we danced, and they knew we knew our music. So we took them to places like the Wagon there. So anyway, a friend of ours was leaving, and we decided we wanted to have a party for her. So a friend of mine, Joel Karamath, used to run a club. Oxford's in Oxford Street, which I think used to be Studio Valbon's at one point. Yeah. So he was running the night there. So I said, look, I'm looking to get a night. Cut a long story short, he got us a bank holiday Monday. And because it was in April, it was around about Easter. This was in 1986. And we ran the club out. And then what happened was he hooked us up with 2 other guys who I'd seen about, but I didn't know them, which was Wayne Malcolm and Tony Francis. And so me and Norman, they did the early bit, and me and Norman did the late bit, and it was just wicked. Everyone was dancing. So Joel came up at the end of the night and gave us 2 envelopes with £50 in. We were doing it for the love of a friend.
Wow.
I was like, what's this? And he goes, I made I didn't even have my business head on. He goes, I made some money. And he goes, look, I've got this idea. How would you fancy between the 4 of us? And there's another guy, right, whose name's Paul Martin, which is Paul Martin that went on to work with Giles Peterson for Talking Loud. He goes, we can become a collective and do a Thursday night. I think I can get us, no, a Saturday night. And then sure enough, he got us a Saturday night at Oxford's. So we did that, then we did Thursdays because we weren't putting on a Saturday. And then we became known as the Buzzboys Inc. And hence, you know, the usual question, how did you get the name? We became the Buzzboys 6 of us. Norman left because he was a dancer, he got a dancing contract. So it was myself, Wayne Malcolm, Joel Karamath, Paul Martin, and Tony Francis. And basically, we did that, then we went on to do the Limelight. We was working with Norman and Jay, and it just took off from there. Then I got onto a station called Studio FM, which was a pirate station in East London. We had H on there, we had DJ Phil Nugent, who went on to manage the group Cruise, and we had Chrissy T, we had Roy the Roach, we had Martin Mad Hatters, we had some names on there, Cleveland Anderson. Yeah. So I kind of built my name up around that. And Cleveland Anderson lived around the corner from me, and he was like probably the first person. In fact, it's very important I say this. I used to go around his house when I used to hear music. I was like, Cleveland, have you got this tune? And he used to let me go around there. I literally had free range to go through his records, pull out what I wanted, record it and bring it back. He trusted me. But what I realised later was he saw the potential of what I was going to do. And he was mentoring me, but I didn't click because I was just this enthusiastic. Oh, I've got this tune, and he introduced me to like Slick Eddie by Sonny Stitt, Doug Richardson, Salsa Mama, and the weird one was when I saw Cat Stevens in his collection. I'm like, Cleveland, what's going on? Cat Stevens. Was Dog a Donut, 1977. I was like, this was 5 years before Jelly Bean Benitez had done it. So I was like, okay. So I kind of, and then the rest is history. I just ended up working with lots of different people, Bobby and Steve, Paul Anderson, Jazzy B. You know, I was around that time, Trevor Nelson, I was around that time where the whole rare groove thing was coming through. Kiss was looking to get, becoming a legal station and so on and so forth. And I was just kind of caught up in there.
My goodness, I really believe that your life is mapped out.
Something like that.
To Greg Edwards, Robbie Vincent, and frequented the club scenes where you listen to DJs like George Power, Paul Trouble Anderson, and lots of others. You look a little bit young though to have frequented Crackers.
Right, I went to Crackers once, as I went to 100 Club once. My cousin Delroy, he lived in Wembley. I come from West London. And obviously, you know, you're growing up, you listen to music and people are bunking off school and whatever. But we actually went, again, it was at Easter. I remember it was Easter Good Friday. And I was under manners, I'll tell anybody. My mum was really strict with me. But because it was my cousin, she was like, oh, I know Delroy. We went out. So we went to Crackers. Now, my cousin Delroy's brother, Lee, I remember him going to Crackers and coming home one afternoon with his white painter's trousers, you know, the carpenter trousers, frayed, with the 7-inch of Donna Summer's I Feel Love in his hands. It must have been 1977. And he was doing his moves and that. And he was like, yeah, this tune's going to be massive. This was before I even knew who Donna Summer was. And he was right. So I got mentored on the whole Crackers thing from people like him, the guys from my local area, and guys from school. So by the time I went to Crackers, I was a little bit versed in it. I went once and I loved it. It was just an eye-opener. It really was. So I was 16. I just turned 16 when I went to Crackers. And then soon after that, it demised. As you know, I went to 100 Club as well on a Saturday afternoon, and that was an experience, seeing black guys doing pliés and all of these moves. I was like, you know, to the slowest jazz tunes to the fastest jazz tunes. It was an eye-opener. It really was.
Who inspired you?
In the music industry.
In the music industry?
Yeah.
I'd have to say, obviously, you have your radio DJs like Emperor Roscoe, I used to listen to, Greg Edwards, Robbie Vincent, Tony Williams. Used to listen to Radio London on a Sunday afternoon. And then I used to listen to Radio Invicta. In terms of DJs, I would say, I've got to say Cleveland Anderson, but I would say Paul, definitely Paul Anderson. George, because obviously I was going to the jazzy funk clubs and things like that. Yeah. DJs like Owen Washington. I used to go to the all-dayers at the Lyceum all-dayers. I remember walking in and I always hear Free by James Mason, or War Flying Machine, you know, or Zaius by Eddie Russ. So early inspirations, I would say those people, to be honest. I would say them.
What would you say your favourite music genre is? Versatile person.
I wouldn't say I have a favourite genre. I would say if it has the essence of the sounds of blackness, I hear the blackness in any form of music. So, for example, when I was younger, I liked Queen, and I remembered Bohemian Rhapsody freaked me out. I knew what every single word in that record meant. I knew it. There was something deep and spiritual about it, which comes from gospel, even though it's got that operatic thing. Then you've got records like Free, All Right Now. Remember the reggae bass line, doo-dum, doo-dum, dum, dum, dum. I was like, yeah, man. And then obviously, you know, you've got like James Brown. So what it is whatever genre of music I hear the Africanness in that music. And so really, it's just got to be good. I mean, I like all types of music. People think, oh, he just likes his jazz funk. People don't realise that I was one of the people championing hip hop at the Jazz Cafe when artists like Diggable Planets came over and Farside. I was the DJ when those artists came over. I was their DJ. So I've got a hip hop connection, I've got a house connection, I've got all kinds of connections. So really, it's very difficult to say that apart from, you know, if it comes from the sound of the drum and the bass from Africa, I like it.
You've interviewed some amazing artists. Can you name a few?
To a degree, Smokey Robinson. Got a phone call at Soul Survivors HQ in Kent. This woman said, oh, sorry, would you be interested in speaking to Smokey Robinson? Let me think about that. So spoke to Smokey for about 15 minutes, which, you know, I wanted more, but they said, look, you only got 15 minutes. Then what happened was I spoke to him and he said, oh, I like talking to you. I said, well, look, if I ever had an opportunity to speak to you again, could I talk to you again? Because I want to ask you about some of the records that you made, what inspired you? He said, okay. About 3 weeks later, we got another phone call. He's doing some more interviews. But I remembered that you said that you wanted to speak to him again. I don't know if we can get past it because they don't like talking to the same person.
Really?
But they put me through. And when I said, hi, Smokey, it's Fitzroy. He goes, yeah, I remember you. And I was like, okay, can we speak about... So that was good. That was really good. Yeah. So we had to give him a front cover. Do you know what I mean? It was like Smokey Robinson. Speaking with Leroy Burgess was an insight. Speaking with Nile Rodgers was fantastic.
Wow.
Also speaking with Larry Blackman. Some of these interviews, they tell me you've only got 20 minutes. And I'm like, are you for real? You want me to talk to Nile Rodgers for 20 minutes? 2.5 hours later. And this is what happens. It's like, even I surprised myself. Lenny Williams and Linda Clifford's interviews stick with me a lot because of there was the elements of them being black and overcoming certain things. Chaka Khan was another one, 20 minutes. And this was from my mate, and this was from my friend Cleveland Anderson, who's her agent. We worked so hard to get this interview. And what happened was he goes, Fitz, you got 20 minutes. He goes, Cleve, man, come on, Chaka, 20 minutes. So he goes, you've got 20 minutes. And I had to send the questions over and everything. So I thought, right, how am I going to deal with this? So what I'd done, but it wasn't, it's not him. It's the management, because they're so used to people asking, they're like, right, okay, you know, they talk about I'm Every Woman, I Feel For You, what was it like to work with Prince? They get them standard questions. So I was like, no, I've got to do this different. So question number 15 or something became my first question. And that was, I said to Chaka, I woke up in 1985 listening to a record. I heard it on LWR. I said, I knew it was you, but I didn't know what song it was. I didn't know what album, but I knew it was you. I said, and it blew me away. I said, so I went on this mission looking for all these Rufus albums. So because then I started to discover all these Rufus albums, on one hand being happy that I found new Rufus music, but on the other hand being disappointed because the record was eluding me until I found the Street Player album. So she's like, okay, you could hear her, she was like, okay. So I said, when I found it, and I played the record, I took it off the record, I kissed the vinyl because I found Destiny. She said to me, wow. She said, that record was named after my niece. My brother, his first child, we called her Destiny. She goes, and I wrote that song because of her. Oh. That's how I got her.
You got her then, didn't you?
50 minutes later, I was the one that said, Chaka, I know you got to go. Because she said, I don't normally like interviews. She goes, but I've really enjoyed talking to you. So these are the things that make me feel like, wow, I'm doing something.
There.
Yeah. You know, so that's kind of like it. And I've spoken to George Duke. I've spoken to Patty Austin. I've spoken to so many people. Gene Khan. I've got to say Gene. That was an interview that was done over the internet, questions and answers. she was doing Blackpool. I think it was 2009, 2008, January 2008. So I went to Blackpool, and her manager, I knew her manager, Dennis Armstead, because he was Roy Ayers' manager from when I used to DJ at the Jazz Cafe.
Wow.
So we both looked at each other, and I said, I know you, because we were introduced by a friend of mine, Fabian, who used to work for Soul Brother. He goes, I know you, and he said, yeah, and I said, you used to be like Roy or Guilty. He goes, Roy's manager. I said, and he goes, Fabian goes, this is Fitzroy. He goes, Gene Khan wants to talk to you. I was like, okay, so just got taken backstage, met with a glass of champagne. Gene Khan said, Fitzroy, I had to meet you. She said, your questions were some of the most intelligent questions I've been asked in 30 years. She said, you really made me remember what I'd done. Because what happens is with a lot of the artists, they do a project and they move on. It turned out, one of my questions with Jean was about an album that she did with M2 mate called Rebirth Cycle from 1975, like on an independent label. And she was talking about it. She goes, I did this album. She goes, I never heard it again. So, but she didn't know what it was called. So when I got back from Blackpool, I was like, if this is the one she's talking about. So I recorded it because she was doing a Jazz Cafe a couple of days after Blackpool. So I recorded it, did the cover, photocopied the cover, and gave it to her. Honestly, she was like, I can't believe, she goes, this is the first time I've ever seen it. She goes, I've not even heard it. So I gave it to her. She was just like over the moon. She just couldn't believe it. And I was like, wow, imagine being able to do that for Gene Khan, do you know what I mean? And so we get on well. Let's say that way. Do you know what I mean? I've made some good acquaintances and some good contacts along the way. So.
Because you've got the right attitude as well.
Well,
you know, definitely. So.
My parents taught me well.
Yeah. Who would you say you enjoyed interviewing the most? Or is that hard?
Well, the most, as I said, there's a few. Speaking with Linda Clifford, speaking with Leon Ware was fantastic. Leon was brilliant. He can talk for England.
I love Leon Ware.
Yeah. Larry Blackman, I would say, holds a good memory for me because throughout the interview, he kept on saying, I can't believe you're asking me these questions. He says, nobody asked me these questions. He says, I can't believe what you're... And he actually did ask me, he said he was doing a book, and he said he wanted to consult with me about my knowledge of Cameo on the book. And he sent me over something, an artist that he was dealing with, who was the guy... Do you remember the film Sister Act 2?
Yeah.
Do you remember the guy who had the skull cap and he had this really high voice? He was a really shy guy, but when he sang, he was in the film anyway. His name's Toby something. Larry Blackman was managing him and sent me his music and wanted me to try and get the music exposed over here. We just had a little, he just liked what I did and I was like, okay, you know. So there's too many to mention. I mean, Lonnie Liston Smith was enlightening and he, you know, it's when they say, I want to talk to you, because they can't get their head around. I said, I'm not the only one. I said, I represent a lot of people who know and love your music. Yeah. I'm just the voice of thousands, but I'm asking the questions that as music fans, as music lovers, we want to know. Yeah. So that's it. They're like, you know, I got to talk to Tina Marie was fantastic. Amazing. Really good. Yeah.
I was going to see her just before.
Well, I was able to tell her about some of the songs that we liked over here. You know, she spoke to me about her relationship with Rick James. I said to her, you know, Tina, I've got to ask you, Portuguese Love, who was that about? I said, if I don't ask you, the girls are going to kill me because they want to know. And she told me, and, you know, I've put some of these interviews, I've recorded them, and I've put them on radio. And what I've done is I've cut them up, where we talk about the artist is talking about the record, and then we play the music. When we did the Tina Marie one on Stomp Radio, they said that the server crashed. They said that so many people was on the thing, and they sent me a picture. They goes, Fitzroy, look at this, and I was like, wow. You know, it's like you think, I'm just doing what I do, and when you see the effect that it has, and people tuning in, and people wanting to listen, and you know the comments that I get from people saying, I thought I knew about that artist, but you've actually opened up a door, because I think they can see how relaxed the artists become when they talk to me. So, you know, I'm blessed and I'm fortunate, and I'm pleased.
You know what? Fitzroy, you're really passionate, and that really comes across strongly.
Thank you.
Well, you've worked abroad.
Mm-hmm.
Can you enlighten me?
Yeah, I've worked in Switzerland. I did a New Year's party with Ian Irving, New Year's 1991. Lastminute.com came on after Eon played, and the place went nuts. I was playing like Madonna Vogue, I played Michael Jackson, I Want You Back, I was playing JBs, I was playing Leroy Burgess, I was playing everything under the music umbrella. They went nuts. I've done Ibiza, I've done Ayia Napa, I've done Germany, I've done Greece. In recent times, I'm actually just about to, in May, going to do the 10th anniversary of Soul in the Algarve. I've done every one with Vivi B. Started off with 100 people, then it's like 400 to 500. I think she's probably got about 600-700 people going now.
Nice.
So I've done that every year in April, sort of April, May. I've also done, this is my third year coming up of doing Ibiza with Bob Masters. What else have I done? I've done Soul in the Caribbean, Vivi B. I've done 2 of them. I've done a bit of travelling.
Yeah.
It's been alright. Yeah, it's been alright. Yeah.
Fitzroy, tell me a little about your background.
You know, where you were born and...
Okay. I was born in Park Royal, which is northwest 10. I lived in Willesden up until I was 8. And then I moved to Perivale in 1972. I went to school in Perivale, and then I went to Eden Green, and it was a boys' school. It was an old, like, Edwardian school, and it was right next door to the old Eden Film Studios, where Arthur Askey and all of those films were made. And then on the other side we had Walpole Park. It's interesting because at the time, as a teenager, I was really into Elvis. Like when Elvis Presley died, I don't know why. Something just to me, why am I sad? I don't even. And I was really into Elvis in a big way. I used to get teased because at the same time everyone was into their disco and their boogie. And anyway, I simultaneously liked it too. And then, you know, I remember hearing tunes like, Ronnie Harris, 6 Million Steps. You know, Keep Your Body Working by Claire, Switch, Nancy D, those kind of tunes. I just kind of, we used to go to a school night, what we call a school night. We used to go to a club called Oscars in Greenfield on a Tuesday night. And like all the kids from all the schools, anyone who went to Ealing and the surrounding areas went to Oscars on a Tuesday. And that's when I first saw Hamish from the Pasadenas. And he was one of there was like 10 top dancers, and he was one of the top 10 dancers. And I remember seeing him dance to Take a Trip to Your Mind by the Hudson People, and Light of the World, Midnight Grooving. And he danced to both of them with the other dancers that were considered the best dancers in there. There was a guy called Rob Marks, a light-skinned guy. There was a few of them. And I remember hearing Midnight Grooving on the Tuesday night, 8 o'clock the Wednesday morning. W.H. Smith's The 12-inch was in my hand. Do you know what I mean? It was them kind of days. And we had a shop across the road from our school called Beggar's Banquet. And we used to go in there. And I remember going in there distinctively with a friend of mine, Nigel Armstrong. And at the time, Al Hudson's music was big. And we went into the shop and we demanded that he put the tune on. And this is us in our school uniform, you know.
And spreading love.
No. It was after Spread Love. It was music. And we said, put the tune on. And we were busting moves like we were in a club. People were coming in the shop. We just didn't, and that's my memory of being so engrossed in music. But I went to school. There was a few people from West London that kind of in the industry now. Our headmaster was called Donald Kincaid. His son went to Drayton Manor, and his son is Yan Kincaid of the Brand New Heathers. So Yan Kincaid, Andrew Levy, and Simon Bartholomew, I think they went to Drayton Manor. But who was below me was IG Culture and Femi. They were the year below me. And if you're in the industry now, you know who they are. Femi went on to Young Disciples, and IG Culture is just like one of the wickedest producers from the UK, broken beat specialists and so on and so forth, you know, new sector movement. So I'm kind of, you know, I didn't know him. He wasn't one of my people, but I think Jamiroquai comes from around that way. But I don't really include Jamiroquai in the circle of people that I knew that came through and went on. And Norman J lived in Acton. Cleveland Anderson was my mate, lived around the corner. He's now an agent. He books Grace Jones. He just recently done a thing in Dubai with Nile Rodgers, Jackson 5, Chaka Khan, Jocelyn Brown. You know, these are people that I grew up with, and they were doing things back then when I was a kid, and we're still in the industry now. So, you know, that's it. And obviously going to Crackers and going to Spats, George Power, and George headhunted me to DJ with him because Cleveland Anderson put on a gig at the Africa Centre. It was me, him, Des Parks. Des Parks is another person I've got to mention. Monumentally inspirational. Me and Des have got a really funny history. I met Des in 1983 on the train station at Harrow on the Wheels train station. And he had a record bag, and at the time, and I know, sorry Des, I'm going to mention it, he had the Jerry curl at the time. But I used to see him randomly because I was seeing a girl that lived in Stanmore. But I used to bump into him every now and again, but it wasn't, I didn't know who he was. But it was what I called a black man thing. You see another black man, you just go, all right, yeah. And then years later, when I started DJing, I kept on hearing this name, Des Parks, and he did the compilations, the Rare Groove compilations, which were revolutionary. And then I saw him, and I looked at him, and goes, I remember you. And I said, I used to see you on it. And he went, yeah, I remember. And then it was like, and then from there onwards, we've just had a relationship. So me, Des, Cleveland, and George did a gig at the African Centre. George heard me, and George just was like, who is this guy?
He blew him away.
And he set up 3 weekly nights with me. One at Oxford, a Wednesday night, Thursday nights at Spats, and Saturday afternoons, which was called the lunchbox, I think. So I was doing 3 gigs a week with George. And then after that, I went on to work for George at his Nice and Ripe studios, making music. And he'd been asking me for years to do it, and I was like, no, I'm not interested. And then when I started doing Twice as Nice, and all the whole UK garage thing, and he said to me, Fitzroy, come on board. And I made music, and you know, there's a couple of things that I made that become UK garage anthems, which I'm quite proud of. So.
Good. Now you mentioned compilations, so I need to ask you about your compilations.
Right. Okay. The very first compilation that I did, the very first compilation I did was with Hubbub Records. There was a guy called Russ, but Adrian Gibson, who was the sort of main promoter of the Jazz Cafe. I was DJing because I had this residency at the Jazz Cafe from 1991 when the Jazz Cafe first opened, and did a night called Z with me, Des Parks, and Brian Norman. Then that's when they were like a straight ahead club, and then they started to do funk, and this woman called Jill, who sadly passed away, heard me DJing, and she just went nuts. Got to get your number, we need this music down here. So I eventually got the residency at the Jazz Cafe. I was there for like 4.5 years. And Adrian was the one who used to book all the artists and stuff. And so he said to me, Fitzroy, there's this compilation, can you do a mix, a live mix? So I went into the Jazz Cafe and recorded a live mix on my mini disc. And that came out as a mixed CD of a 3-track CD for Hubbub Records. It was called The Cream of Rare Groove. So that was my first compilation. My next musical thing was when I worked for Nice and Right, and I did a remix of Mariah Carey had a track out at the time called Sweetheart, which was originally recorded by Rainey Davis. I did a remix of the track, and it went if you got a rewind at Twice as Nice, because I was DJing at Twice, if you got a rewind, your tune was big. I got a rewind. The next thing that I did was I became made resident at Twice as Nice with Steve Sutherland in the R&B called Reminisce Room, and Twice as Nice had a R&B soul hip hop room, and then they had a UK garage room, and Spoonie was the resident in the garage room. So we got approached by React Records to do a compilation. So Steve Gordon kindly extended the invitation for me and Steve Sutherland to mix the R&B side of the Twice as Nice album. And I think from what I was told, it was the very first one of its kind, like a UK garage and R&B double album. And we did it. We did the sleeve notes. We were interviewed by all the magazines, did a few TV things and stuff like that. And that was interesting. And then after that, my next thing was I did a remix for Robbie Craig's "Who's the Better Man," and that was through George. Nice and right. I've done a remix for that. And then I did the Twice as Nice Urban Flavours, which went gold. I remixed that. So yeah, and then I've done a few things. I've done a Junk Funk for Freestyle Records. Adrian Gibson heard a dub plate that I'd done, went nuts, goes, "Oh, I need to have that track," so he signed it. And then I did a track with Steve Wren for Leah McRae, which was Gwen McRae's daughter, called Your Love, which was a nice wicked tune that came out on One Nation. And then I did a track with Noel McCoy. It's my first track. I wrote it, produced it, done the music, I did everything apart from sing on it. And it was called She, and it appeared on Luxury Soul Weekend's album, got released on there. And it also got released on another project with a guy, I can't remember his name now, but he used to work on Solar when I was on Solar Radio. He was doing these independent compilations, and it was the first track on his compilation. So, yeah, I've done it.
Very clever and versatile man, aren't you?
Few little things.
What was your involvement in the BBC documentary on Muhammad Ali?
Ah, okay.
You're a TV star as well.
Okay, how did you find out about that? Some friends of mine that I went to school with and college with had a PR company called the Watchman Agency, and they were doing a lot of stuff, and they got approached for someone to supply music for a documentary on Muhammad Ali. So they asked me, because they knew that I loved Muhammad Ali and they just knew I knew my music. So I supplied, let me get this right, 3 tracks. One was James Brown, If I Ruled the World. Another one was Brown Baby by Diana Ross. I can't remember the third, but I got credited I've sort of got the documentary at home. I got credited at the end, music supplied by Fitzroy, which was like, thank you, God.
They're giving you autograph.
But what was interesting about that one was I was DJing at a jazz cafe at the time, and they only put Fitzroy. They didn't put Fitzroy the Buzzboy, they put Fitzroy. I was DJing at the jazz cafe on a Friday night, and this guy come up to me, and he said, "It was you, wasn't it?" He goes, "That track, Brown Baby by Diana Ross." He goes, "What?" He goes, "What is that?" Because what it is there's some strings in there. I think it's Gene Page that does the strings, and it's been sampled in hip hop. So it was probably people thinking, where does those strings come from? And it was probably there that he heard it, and he goes, "It was you, wasn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, guilty as charged," kind of thing. So that's how that came about.
You have done so much.
I've done a few things.
I know. You know what? I could sit here and we could go on for
Yeah,
hours
yeah,
and
we
hours
could.
and hours. How do you relax this way?
How do I relax?
I like to ask people this, especially when I see them all over the place.
Okay, of late, drawing. I've been drawing a lot. When I was at school, that's what I was known for. That was my vocation. Even though people may think I'm an artist, music, I was meant to be an artist. That was Fitzroy. It's an artist. So of late, I have been picking up pencils. Sometimes I use biros, and I might do album covers. Or if I see a picture that I like, I do portraits and stuff.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and I must admit, I'm like, I can't believe because I kind of do it randomly, and there was a period where I didn't do it for a long time, but I find it very therapeutic, and the reaction that I've got from people are like, you need to do a gallery, and I'm like, really? I'm like, really? They're like, Fitzroy, do you know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, listening to music, obviously, when I get to dance, I do like to shake an egg and stuff like that, you know. So, but I love, and I tell you what, as much as it's work, being on the radio, love it. I can't explain it. I'm at home. I can chat. I can give information about what's going on in Soul Survivors. I can tell stories of when I first heard this record. Like the other day, I played "Don't Know What to Say" by the Blackbirds, because I'm DJ for the Blackbirds at the Under the Bridge in July. They're coming over with Tom Brown. Adrian Gibson, who is now doing his own thing, just said, "Do you want to do Blackbirds?" I was like, "Yeah," because I did the Blackbirds when they came over in '98. So I played that, and instantly I could tell you, right, the first time I heard that record was Greg Edwards, 1980, Soul Spectrum. I've got that elephant memory, and that's what I love, and I interact with people. And I was on Crackers Radio yesterday, and I played Switch by Nancy D, and I said, who remembers this one? And it's just like, people are just like, oh my God, I prefer the instrumental, wicked tune, people in Spain, you know, and it's very therapeutic to get that, because you're thinking, wow, because there's so many people doing what I'm doing, but it seems like when I do it, I make a difference. Well, it's not for me to say, but I like the fact that I get the response that I do, like with the interviews, the feedback from the artists. I mean, I went to see Gene Khan the other day with Charles Tolliver and Stanley Cowell. They did the Strata East gig, which Giles Peterson put together. I interviewed Charles and Stanley over the phone, did the interviews, I put them in a magazine. When I met them, they were like, Charles Tolliver was like, I'm waiting to meet you. Okay, I don't know what it is, and Gene was just lovely. Shalimar, went to see them at Bristol the other day. Carolyn Griffey will drop everything to come say hello to me. It's crazy, because we had just had a report, Jeffrey Daniels on interview, and Howard, and when they see me, and it's like, I'm thinking, this is really nice, because there's so many people that they meet, but, you know, I think it's because I travelled up to Bristol, because normally they come to London, but they were like, you're here. You know, they sorted it out for me, but it's moments like that, and they're like, whatever you need, we've got a new track, we'll send it to you, you know, and I've just become part of a new thing with a chart. And obviously I do a thing, I consult for a company called KFP Enterprise, which their motto is keeping you in the loop. Basically, they are a promotion company. Myself and Barry King have been consulted to bring business into their empire, where they want to promote music worldwide. And it's like, to be asked out of all the people they could ask, it's like they come to me. I'm like, you know, and I don't see myself as this powerful and integral people as some people do, because I'm just doing what I do. There's loads of us to do it, but there's something that there's a synergy of what I do that works for other people. So I'm like, well, do you know what? I'm happy to do it, as long as we can thrash out the terms, dot the I's and cross the T's, and you know, sort of, you know, it's about keeping the continuity of what we've learned. You know, it's like us as people from the diaspora. We've got to keep this thing going, because there is, excuse the phrase, there is a bit of a whitewash at the moment, and it's almost like our history is being forgotten, and it's like we don't exist, and it's like we're not capable of conveying what other people are, and it's like, well, why is that? You know, how does someone like Des Parks, who's been around since the 70s, you know, set up dance groups, been integral in groups like Barry Sharp and Dinah Brown and the Brothers, he gave them their first record deal. But yet when people talk, they don't talk about him. And he had a dance group, which was Unknown Quantity, that went on to dance in Diana Ross's first ever #1 hit, Chain Reaction. But yet people don't talk about him. You know, you look on Facebook, people, it's like, how can you do that? And he's the guy that taught Trevor Shakes how to dance.
Really?
Seriously. And Trevor Shakes confirmed it with me. And because people talk about things from a certain perspective.
Yeah.
Now I do, but what I do is there was stuff before me. So when I want to tell that story, I go to the people that was there. So that's why I went to Des Parks when I did the interview with him, and he just opened up a whole can of worms about what was going on in the industry, and he takes a seat back. And lest we forget, someone like him is the one. When you talk about compilations, he was the guy that, apart from Morgan Khan doing Street Sounds, the next person to revolutionise how that was Des Parks when he did the Red Groove compilations. A lot of the samples that came out from hip hop artists like Tribe Called Quest, you know, We're Getting Down by Wilden Irving, right? They found that through his thing. They didn't know about their music, even though it comes from their backyard, you know. And his link with people like Roy Ayers, Leroy Burgess, Gil Scott Heron is ridiculous. But yet it doesn't get documented, apart from, I've got to mention Lloyd Bradley's book, 100 Years of Black Music in the Capital. Fantastic. Yeah, it's like what you're doing, you're documenting this stuff, and it's like, for me, if I'm part of something like that, you know, then I feel like there's an achievement, because, you know, as independent artists or purveyors of the music, we have to do a little bit, because we have to leave something for the next generation.
Definitely.
So that they know what's going on, because at the moment stories are being told, bits are being left out, and certain people are being like, it's all about me. And I know I'm one of many people that can tell a story, and I choose to do it through Soul Survivors. That's my hook. I'm fortunate. I have a platform. I can talk to him in this issue here. Don't mind. Sheila E, looking good on the front cover.
Doesn't she?
Marcia Griffiths, so Sheila E Latin, Marcia Griffiths reggae, Frosty original Canvey Island, sort of Lacy Ladies, Goldmine Boy, the Summer Solstice team, Stanley Cowell and Charles Tolliver, you know, set up Strata East Records, one of the first independent black-owned labels in jazz when Blue Note and Prestige were about, and Jeff Lorber. You know, and it's like I'm proud when I put a magazine together and I've got this variety of artists with all the adverts that we've got. So
I think that's excellent.
Yeah.
Because I'm the type of person, I like to read the sleeves of an album.
Yeah.
Magazines like that from front to right at the back.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, you're probably very much like me in terms of that is how I got a lot of my education, and it actually taught me a lot about myself as a black person, because talking to Kenny Gamble, oh my gosh, that was, wow, I'm talking to Kenny Gamble. And for him to give him and Leon Huff to give me an hour and a half and tell me, you know, because I was talking some deep stuff with them. They told me about, we talked about the song Ship Ahoy by the OJs. And he said to me, he said, do you want to see the production that we did when we did that song? He goes, we had the slave ships. They were all dressed up in the slavery gear. He goes, the whips were cracking. He goes, when they performed that song, that was the stage show. So when you talk to them and you open up a question and they talk, you're like, thank you, God. Do you know what I mean? So it's you have to look at these people and think, and you have to think what they went through, you know?
Yes.
When I spoke to Wayne Henderson, I've got to say, Wayne Henderson, that was an interview. God bless his soul, because he's not here anymore. That was an interview. I've met Wayne before, when I did it at the Jazz Cafe. He signed my albums. I went to see him at Ronnie Scott's. He had never played at Ronnie Scott's. He's been in the business 40, 50 years, never done Ronnie Scott's. So it was Wayne Henderson, New Jazz Crusaders. So I got on the guest list. I went to meet him afterwards. I went to interview him. He was too tired. But he said to me, come to my hotel tomorrow and we'll talk. So I went to his hotel in Tottenham Court Road. Got in the door, he shook my hand and he said, I looked in your eyes because I knew I had to talk to you. Just that, I was like, okay. He spoke about everything. He told me that when they were kids, they were teenagers, they'd come from Texas, Houston. He said they were doing a chitlin circuit. They went to a bar one time. They went in to get something to eat. And this white racist got on the phone, and went to call the Ku Klux Klan because we're going to lynch these blah, 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 blahs. And this black guy that was working goes, you need to leave. Because you need to leave because she's calling for whatever. So they had to leave. And then they had to go and record and perform the next day. And I'm trying to show people, do you understand that 3 minutes of pleasure that we're listening to on a record? You have no idea what they had to do to go through to make that. And that's the stuff. And then he's telling me about Michael Jackson when he remixed Rebby Jackson's track and the whole Jackson family came over to his house and no one moved until Michael spoke. And all of this stuff and the stuff he did with the Crusaders and the artists that he worked with, setting up at home, how he discovered Pleasure, my favourite band on the planet. It's like, I'm just like, oh, gosh, this is, you just couldn't make this up. Do you know what I mean? And I get people saying, wow, you really dug deep. And I'm like, well, my job is done at the end of the day. I know I've been chatting, but I'm very passionate.
I think it's fantastic.
I can't help it.
I love to hear these things because I love music as well.
Yeah.
But you know what, Fitzroy, it's been an absolute pleasure
Thank you.
speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I'm sure people have learned a lot more about you now.
I hope so. But I'll just say that we have a website, which is www.thesoulsurvivors.co.uk. We will be 9 years in July 2015. We've got a big anniversary package for the next issue for July. We'll be full of July and August. And you can go to our website and we're on an app. We have an app. And I do radio shows, Radio Crackers, various stations, and the magazines out and about like Jeremy Beadle. So make sure you get one.
So how many radio stations?
I do Stomp, Ram Jam. They're syndicated shows, and there's things are changing. There's quite a few, but you know I'm on Facebook. Go to the website. All the information will be there about what I'm doing and what Soul Survivor is doing, and you know, long may we continue to be the info provider for the Soul Survivor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers.